The cursor blinked like a heartbeat I didn't want to feel, and the first word I read was lover. It was 2:17 a.m., the apartment so still I could hear the refrigerator humming through two closed doors. I'd only come in to turn off the desk lamp she always left burning. Another small courtesy I'd carried for years without keeping score, yet the screen flared awake when my sleeve brushed the mouse. A single document, unnamed, the cursor pulsing beneath a sentence that detonated inside my chest. I can still taste him when I kiss my husband goodnight. I stepped back, as though the monitor had hissed. The swivel chair rolled away, knocking the wastebasket so that a crumpled tissue fluttered out like a white flag. My first coherent thought was ridiculous. She'll be mad if she wakes and finds me in here. We'd agreed years ago that her writing room was off limits after 10, the same way people agree not to open each other's mail. Privacy, we called it. Trust, I thought. I read the next line before I could stop myself. He asks about David and I laugh. How easy lying has become. David.
Me.
The man who'd carried her grandmother's casket, so she wouldn't have to watch the straps lower it into the ground. The man who still cut the crusts off her sandwiches because she once joked they tasted like childhood disappointment. Reduced to a pronoun wedged between verbs that weren't mine. My knees ached from standing still too long. I gripped the desk edge, the laminate buckling slightly under my fingers, and forced myself to scroll. Each sentence was a layer of skin peeled away. She wrote about meeting him in the alley behind the bookstore on 6th, how the brick wall scraped her shoulders while I closed my eyes, but the words stayed lit on the inside of my lids like afterflash of a camera. A floorboard creaked in the hallway. I froze, listening for her footfall, the soft drag of the quilt she trails like a child. Nothing. Just the old building settling, lying to me the way everything suddenly seemed capable of lying. I clicked the window closed, then opened it again, unable to decide whether hiding my discovery was protecting her or myself. The document hadn't been saved. The title bar read Document 1. Maybe she'd opened it tonight, maybe minutes after I'd kissed her temple and mumbled I was turning in. Had she sat here composing while I brushed my teeth, humming that off-key Springsteen song she hates when I sing? I left the room exactly as I'd found it. Lamp on, chair angled toward the door, and pulled it shut until the latch gave its discreet click. In the bedroom, she was a curled silhouette, the sheet pushed to her waist, one bare shoulder glowing blue from the nightlight in the ensuite. I used to love that shoulder, the way the ball joint rounded like a sculptor's flawless error. Now I imagined someone else's mouth there, and had to clamp my jaw to keep from vomiting. I stood over her for a full minute, maybe 5, trying to marry this peaceful face with the woman who wrote, I came so hard I forgot my own last name. The hypocrisy winded me. I'd once boasted to my brother that marriage wasn't a contract but a long conversation. You just keep talking, I'd said, swirling beer in a plastic cup at his wedding. Even when you're bored, you stay curious. Turns out she'd been talking to someone else. I retreated to the kitchen, poured water, dumped it, poured gin instead. The bottle hummed against the rim of the glass. I drank it like medicine, letting the juniper scorch the back of my throat so I'd feel branded, marked. Sure this was happening. The digital clock on the stove claimed 2:43. Time had become elastic, traitorous. Every minute carried me farther from the man who'd walked in here to turn off a lamp. I tried to inventory the past months for signs. She'd started working late on Tuesdays. She brought home new linger tags tucked discreetly into the hamper. A woman wants to feel pretty for herself. She'd laughed when I'd lifted a lacy strap with playful curiosity. I'd believed her the way you believe gravity. Evident, boring, essential. There were other clues. Passwords changed, just company policy. A second phone she claimed was for the freelance proofreading gig, the sudden interest in running. I need my own meditative space, babe. I'd even teased her about the cliché. What's next, aquatherapy and a nose ring? She'd stuck her tongue out, and I'd kissed her without tasting betrayal on her breath. The gin was gone. I rinsed the glass and set it upside down exactly where it lived in the drying rack, muscle memory performing loyalty even while my mind defected. I thought of waking her, shaking her awake like a child caught sneaking in. I pictured her eyes widening first with sleep, then with guilt. Then what? Relief? Defiance? I realized I had no map for this conversation. Every marriage manual assumes both parties are already inside the same story. I went back to the office, heart slugging against my ribs. The document glowed patiently, as if it had been waiting for me to grow up. I sat, placed my fingers on the keys, and, for the first time in my life, invaded her. I typed beneath her final paragraph, "Who is he?" I saved the file. The cursor stopped blinking, steady as a predator's eye. I must have dozed off, because gray light was leaking through the blinds when her whisper skated across my neck. "David." She stood in the doorway, robe belted tight, hair flattened on one side. Concern wrinkled her brow, the same expression she wore when I had the flu, when my father died, when I'd once admitted I was terrified of fatherhood. "Why are you?" Her gaze flicked to the screen. I watched color drain from her face the way it does in time-lapse footage of fruit rotting. "You left it open," I said. My voice sounded like someone else's gravel under tire. She stepped forward, stopped, looked around as if searching for an exit that hadn't existed since 1948. "I can explain," she began, but even she seemed to know how obese that sentence had grown. I rotated the monitor so she could see her own confession. "My addition, who is he?" sat there like a child waiting to be claimed. She sank to the carpet. No sound except the soft collapse of fabric. For a moment we were both silent, listening to the city cough outside, an ambulance fading towards someone else's catastrophe. "It's over," she said finally. "It has been for weeks. I wrote that last night to make it real, so I could end it real." A laugh burbled out of her, bitter. "I thought if I wrote it down, I wouldn't carry it anymore." I wanted to scream that carrying was my job, grocery bags and broken vacuum cleaners and her father's dementia diagnosis I'd carried. Instead, I asked the only question that mattered. "Do you love him?" She lifted her face. Tears had already mapped highways down her throat. "I don't know," she whispered. "I know I love you." Something inside me both broke and reset, like a bone snapping into place. I stood, knees popping, and closed the laptop. The click sounded final, a coffin lid. "I'm going to leave for a while," I said. "When I come back, we'll decide whether we're still a story worth editing." She started to speak, but I raised a hand, not angry, just done. She nodded, pressing 4 fingers against her mouth as if holding in every remaining lie. At the door I paused, hand on the knob. I wanted to turn, to take in the room one last time the way you look at a house before selling it. But I didn't. Some memories deserve to stay unphotographed. I stepped into the hallway, pulled the door shut, and walked toward the elevator, each footfall echoing like a sentence I refused to revise.